Ackerman Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Ackerman's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at ackermanresources.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. Welcome back to the show, Rick.
Thanks much for inviting me on, Jim. Always a pleasure.
The big board's showing 2 days now of major losses. What's your position on that?
Well, I'm scalping against the trend, and this morning I got long briefly in the E-mini S&Ps, and when the trade produced only a small profit, it was telling me get out of the way because we're coming down lower. And, there are two possibilities here. The market's going to make a proper adjustment to this coronavirus, or more so in the form of a bear market. So I'm leaving open the possibility that the 11-year-old bull market is over and that it's been ended by kind of a black swan here. Nobody would have predicted that a global pandemic would kill the bull.
Well, I actually did an interview with James Corbett and also with John Rubino a few weeks before the coronavirus hit. And I said, what would happen if a pandemic hit the markets right now? And, of course, they predicted all the stuff that's happening right now.
Very interesting, yeah.
Yeah, well, I just thought it's cold and flu season. Who knows if the next kind of flu that hits isn't going to be a really serious one. And I was just thinking of the Spanish flu epidemic that hit 100 years ago.
Uh-huh. Almost exactly 100 years ago, and I guess it's an apt comparison. The very peculiar thing about this pandemic, as far as it affected the markets, was that we had a sell-off initially, and you thought, well, at least the crime syndicate who makes a living essentially throwing other people's hard-earned money at six stocks, they at least have the good sense to lie down on a mat and play dead. But when the market rallied a day and a half later, you had to think this is crazy. I mean, even we were at the point where if there were an announcement that the pandemic, that the virus spread had been stopped completely, there were still enough disruptions in the global economic supply chain at that point to conclude that we're really in for a global slowdown. It's affecting the tentacles. It's scary because you've got, for instance, something like 200 suppliers of Boeing all wondering what the heck to do with 737 parts that are becoming unavailable. GM is facing the same problem. China is a supplier of so many parts for so many manufactured things that the shutdown in China is very much affecting the rest of the world. So I think the market hasn't even begun to discount these problems.
And of course, too, China being 20% of the world's economy now compared to 5% when SARS broke out and they shut down the country, it's going to take them some time to ramp up once this medical crisis is over.
Yeah, they've certainly lost a step here, and of course, there have been a few stories, columns in various newspapers speculating as to whether the economic problems of China could take the regime down.
Or they just go plain nuts on their own population to make sure if there is unrest that it doesn't spread. And there's also been the conspiracy theory that this virus was released by the Chinese to stop the riots in Hong Kong.
Yeah, Zero Hedge had a story out initially that said that the virus had escaped some, I think it may have been a Canadian lab, and then there was a story a day or two later that that seemed to falsify that view, and it did it in a very blunt way. It said the stuff at Zero Hedge is so crazy, why should anybody read it? And then a variation on the story surfaced, which hasn't been refuted with the same force, which suggests that, yeah, this coronavirus somehow made its way out of some lab.
Well, there's the reason that happened was some Chinese nationals were found to be spying at the Canadian Centre for Disease Control in Winnipeg, and they may have smuggled out genetic material. Now, they thought it was connected to the Ebola virus, but Wuhan, where this outbreak happened, happens to be where the Chinese Biological Weapon Research Center is. So,
right.
so you can see why
right.
people might start connecting it, and who's to say that this isn't some modified form of the Ebola virus that was stolen?
Well,
yeah.
the stolen, I'm a little bit skeptical of the stolen virus story. They never really seem to pan out. Any country which seeks to weaponize a virus obviously has risk of killing its own population. Years and years ago, maybe 30 years ago, the scariest article I ever read was by a fellow named Ramos in the New Yorker magazine, and it talked about a Russian program with virus recombinants. They were essentially mixing the DNA of influenza with cobra venom to produce something that could be airborne, and so at the time, supposedly the effect of this agent was to reduce all living matter to carbon dust in, well, the amount of time that it took to do that was classified. So I'm a little skeptical of the conspiratorial release of a virus into this world.
Well, when the Cold War ended, Russian scientists admitted that they did have weaponized anthrax ready to go in special satellites that would have spread it over the U.S. So you can see how these conspiracy theories get started.
Yeah, they do, and I think that the guy in charge of Russia's program, he had this was essentially a biological program, but this guy came from Russia's weapons factory, and so it was a little suspicious. But fortunately, we haven't read of anything out there at large in the viral world that would give us the kind of results that this mixture of cobra venom and influenza might.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after the break.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, what have some of the key stocks told you about this latest bump in the market? Is this going to be pulling us down further? Is it a minor correction? What's your view?
Well, I continue to look at Apple as the key bellwether. You know, I try to keep it simple, and if you follow Apple and you understand it, you really can't go wrong on the big picture. So I did a online presentation last week. It was just to look at the stochastic indicators for Apple, and Apple was in the process on its daily chart of tracing out a triple top formation. I refer to it as a double divergence, and bottom line, it was pretty bearish, and it suggested that Apple was being propped up to distribute shares. And of course, the observations that came from that session have really been borne out in spades over the last couple of days. Apple has come off a high at let me see where we are, a high up around 330, and it's been down 290 and just barely holding on. So the stock took a real header, and I think that it was the conclusions from that session were applicable to the market. As I mentioned earlier, it was just being heavily distributed by the usual smart money guys.
Once you get past that, what do you think this is going to mean for people investing in other products?
Well, I think that we've got problems, really. There's going to be, if not a global recession, there's going to be a very serious slowdown, and at some point there's probably not much distinction between the two. So I think consumer products are going to really take a hit. Probably the most vulnerable sector will be the airlines, simply because, you know, I talked with a virologist, and he said that there's really no risk of this virus spreading if you're in your own little town and you just kind of hunker down and you stay there. But the minute you get on an airplane, you're at risk. And this is very apparent in Italy. Italy had taken some protective steps, the only European country to do that, to restrict flights and do this and that, and it still wasn't enough. Italy is now number 3 on the virus outbreak list behind China and South Korea. So I think air travel hasn't begun to discount the problems. Well, it's begun, but I think that's really the sector to stay short, because it's really going to take an enormous hit. And as far as companies that benefit, I suppose in the biomed area where you've got work on vaccines, but even there you read that it could take 18 months to get a vaccine if they can develop one at all. So the best play here may be hunkering down.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, how's the precious metals market handling this coronavirus?
Oh, I'm loving gold here. And silver, too. Silver kind of lags gold, but based on the very, very nice rally we've had in gold and looking at a weekly continuous chart, this would be basis April COMEX, I put out a $2,285 an ounce target for gold, and it is currently trading 1648, so we've got an almost 600-point rally potential there. That comes off the weekly chart, and it could take some time, and by that I mean anywhere from 4 to 8 months, or maybe even longer. The thing to notice in gold, though, is that the rally has stalled at what I call the hidden pivot midpoint at 1666. That's the exact midpoint of a CD leg of an ABCD pattern in gold. So I can't, at this point, give you an ironclad guarantee that gold's going to 2285, but if we see 2 consecutive monthly bar closes above that 1666, I believe it will get to 2285, and more immediately, a smaller pattern that projects to 1720 looks good to me. That's a good target for the April contract, which at the apex of yesterday's spike hit 1691, came down pretty hard, currently trading 1647, but I think gold's going to take another leg up to 1720. So I really like gold here, and there were reports yesterday when gold got really schmeiced off the peak that some whale was out there selling $3 billion worth of gold futures. And whether or not that's true, if and when gold gets decisively above that 1666 midpoint pivot of mine, I don't care how big the whales are, they're going to get themselves in trouble if they're short gold, and nothing's going to stop it. Nothing's going to stop gold on the way to that 2285 target.
If this drop in the market is a major correction, is it going to boost gold or bring gold down with it?
Well, I think that the trajectory will be less steep. You know, we've had an initial move into gold. There's definitely safe haven flight of money into gold, but I think over time, as we get a better handle on the virus, gold will become, the rallies will become less spectacular. Let's say the flow of information will be steadier, and it won't push money so precipitously into bullion.
Rick, how would you sum up what's happening now?
Well, I'd say that the markets have yet to fully discount the economic threat posed by the spread of coronavirus, and to the extent that investors dislike uncertainty more than anything else, we're entering a period of uncertainty. As I mentioned earlier, even if someone announced a vaccine for the virus tomorrow, for sure we have an enormous rally in the stock market, but supply chain disruption is already significant enough that we're going to be dealing with the threat of a global recession.
Rick, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Well, thanks for inviting me on, Jim, and giving me a chance to connect with your audience.
My guest has been Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks. His website, rickackerman.com. If you have any questions for Rick or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.